Pre-statistics. Using elimination to solve systems, Part 5. Lesson objective. Solve word problems involving systems. Example 12. Scott is thinking of two numbers, but he won't tell you what they are. He tells you that the sum of the two numbers is 163 and their difference is 33. Find the two numbers. Solution? We're going to let x be equal to the first number and y is equal to the second number. Now we have two unknown variables, so we will need two equations to find them. Now since we know that the sum of the two numbers is 163, that equates to x plus y equals 163. Difference means we subtract, so x minus y equals 33. Now we have our system. The easiest way to solve this system is by elimination. If we were to add these two equations as they are, the y's will cancel. So x plus x is 2x. 163 plus 33 is 196. Dividing by 2, x is 98. To find the other number y, we take the first equation, we substitute 98 for x, and y turns out to be 65. So the first number is 98, and the second number is 65. Example 13. The manager of a movie theater wants to know the number of adults and children who go to the movies. The theater charges $8 for each adult ticket and $4 for each child ticket. At the showing where 200 tickets were sold, the theater collected $1,304. How many adult tickets and children tickets were sold? Solution? Since we're wanting to find the number of adult tickets and children tickets, we're going to let A be equal to the number of adult tickets and C equal to the number of children tickets. Now one equation involves the number of tickets, which was a grand total of 200. So if we take the number of adult tickets plus the number of children tickets, that will equal 200. For the next equation, that involves the amount of money collected, which was a grand total of $1,304. So each adult ticket is $8, so we take 8 times the number of adult tickets, which is 8, and then we would add that to 4 times the number of children ticket, because each ticket for a child costs $4. We add those two up, and that's equal to 1,304. So we have our system. A plus C equals 200. And 8a plus 4c equals 1,304. I'm going to solve this system by elimination. I'm going to take the first equation and multiply it by a -4. That will cancel out the c's. So the first equation will become -4a minus 4c equals -800. I'm going to add that to the second equation, and we have 4a equals 504, which means a is 126. So this is the number of adult tickets. To find the number of the children tickets, I take the first equation, substitute 126 for A, and solve for C, and we get a result of 74 for C. So we always want to put the answer back in the terms of the original problem. There are 126 adult tickets and 74 children tickets sold. Example 14. AT&T provides monthly plans for cellular phone customers. Sam and Ann both select Plan B, for which monthly charges are based upon per minute rates of calls during peak and non-peak hours. In 1 month, Sam made 75 minutes of peak calls and 30 minutes of non-peak calls. His bill was $40.05. During the same period, Ann made 50 minutes of peak calls and 60 minutes of non-peak calls. Her bill was $35.10. What is AT&T's charge per minute for peak and non-peak calls on Plan B? In this case, the question is telling us what the variables are, and that is the cost for peak and non-peak minutes. So we're going to let x be the cost of the peak minutes and y be the cost of the non-peak minutes. Because we have two variables, we need two equations. The first equation involves the calls made by Sam, and the second equation involves the calls made by Ann. So for Sam, we take the number of peak minutes, multiply that by x, and then add that to the number of non-peak minutes and times that by y, and that will equal his total, which is $40.05. For Ann, we do the same thing. Take the number of peak minutes, multiply it by x, and then add the number of non-peak minutes and multiply that by y, and then that will equal her total bill. So we have the system 75x plus 30y equals 40.05, and 50x plus 60y equals 35.10. So we have the system. Again, I'm going to use elimination to solve this. I'm going to take the first equation and multiply it by -2. This will eliminate the y's. I just have to remember to distribute the -2 to all the terms in the equation. So we have 150x minus 60y equals -80.10. Add that to the second equation, and we have -100x equals -45. Dividing by -100, we have x to be 0.45. To find y, we take an original equation, we substitute in for x. So we have this equation, and now we need to multiply 70 times 0.45. Then we need to subtract that from 40.05, and we get 30y equals 6.30. Divided by 30, y is 0.21. So the answer to this question in terms of the problem, the cost of the peak minutes is 45 cents per minute, and the cost for the non-peak minutes is 21 cents per minute. Example 15. Here we have a choice between two jobs, a sales position involving cell phones, and from the advertisement, this position pays $150 a week plus 20% commission. For the second sales position, it involves stereo equipment, and it gives $200 a week plus 10% commission. Write a system that relates the amount of sales to the amount of money earned in each week at each job. How much would you need to sell in a week at each job to earn the same amount of money at both? So our first step is to identify what the variables are, and in this case we need to know the amount of sales, and then that will give us how much money we get paid for each job. So we're going to let M be the amount of money that you make, and that is dependent upon the amount that you sell. So for the cell phone, 20% commission means if you take 20% of how much you sell, that's your commission. And then we're going to add that to the 150 that you get each week. For the stereo equipment, it will be 10% times how much you sell plus $200 each week. So for the cell phone, we have M equals 150 plus 0.20 or 20% times S, the amount of sales. And for the stereo equipment, we have M equals 200 plus 0.10, which is 10% times S. I'm going to solve this by elimination. I'm going to multiply the second equation by -1, and this will cancel out the M's. So M minus M is 0. 150 plus -200 is -50, and 0.20 S minus 0.10 S is positive 0.10 S. Add 50 to both sides and divide by 0.10. We have S equals 500. To find out how much money you'll make selling $500, we take one equation, we substitute 500 for S, and we see that the amount of money you take home is $250. So when you sell $500, you'll make the same amount, $250, for both jobs. After talking with salespeople, you estimate weekly sales of $600 at either job. Which job would you earn more money? So we take the cell phone plan. Everywhere we see an S, we stick 600. So this is going to become 150 plus 0.20 times 600, which is 120, and you'll make 270. For the stereo equipment, it will be 200 plus 0.10 times 600, which will give you 260. So you'll make $10 more with the cell phone job if you sell $600 a week. This is our last example. Example 16. The total tuition for students at University College and State College consists of student fees plus costs per credit. Some classes have different credit values. On the table on the next slide shows the total tuition for programs with different number of credits at each college. Assume the patterns from both colleges are linear. So here we have the table. Here's the number of credits. Here's the charges for the university college, and here's the charges for the state college. Write a system that represents the relationship between credit hours and total tuition costs for both colleges. Find the solution to this system and check it. When is it cheaper to attend university college or state college? So our first step is to identify what are the variables. So the first variable is the number of credits, and the second variable is the tuition cost. Now the number of credits is our independent variable because the tuition cost depends upon the number of credits taken. So for university college, our first step is to come up with an equation for this data set. Now it's assumed that this is linear, so our first step is to find the slope, and because it's linear we can pick any 2 points and find the slope. So if you recall, the slope formula is the difference of the y's over the difference in the x's. I'm going to take the first 2 points, so the difference of the y's would be 115 minus 55 over 3 minus 1, and that gives us 60 divided by 2, which is 30. So our slope is 30. Now we need to compute the y-intercept. We know that m is 30. To find b, I pick a point. I'm going to use the first point. Y is 55, x, the number of credits is 1. I multiply that by my slope, which will be 30, and then I subtract that from 55, and we have b is 25. So the equation is y equals 30x plus 25, where x is the number of credits and y is the total tuition cost. To get our next equation for state college, again we're going to use slope. I'm going to use the first 2 points, so the difference of the y's would be 111 minus 47 over number of credits 3 minus 1. That gives us 64 over 2, which is 32. To find the equation, I substitute 32 for m. To find b, I now pick a point. I'm going to use the first one. So the tuition y is 47 when the number of credits is 1. Substituting that into our equation, we have 47 equals 32 plus b, and b is 15. So the final equation is y equals 35x plus 15. So now we have our system. In this case, I'm going to solve this by substitution. Both y's are isolated, so I'm going to take the first equation, and wherever I see a y, I'm going to substitute 32x plus 15. That gives me the equation 32x plus 15 equals 30x plus 25. We have x's on both sides, so I'm going to subtract 30x to both sides. Next step, we want to subtract 15, and we're left with 2x equals 10, which means x is equal to 5. To find y, I take one of the equations. Everywhere I see an x, substitute 5, and we see that y is 175. Which means when the number of credits is equal to 5, the tuition is 175 for both the university college and the state college. Now to check it, I'm going to use the graphing calculator. I type in my equation in y1 and y2, and using my table feature, I see that when x is 5, we have 175 for y1 and y2. When is it cheaper to attend university college, state college? It's cheaper to attend university college if you're taking more than 5 credits. And if you take less than 5 credits, the state is cheaper. Thanks for watching.